I think it's in the name, integrated business planning. Anybody who wants to be successful, you need to have a plan of where we're going. What is it we want to do with our business? How do we get there? As Mike outlined, where are the gaps? Based on that, we can start coming up with how do we overcome those gaps?
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is the Digital Supply Chain Podcast, the #1 podcast focusing on the digitization of supply chain. And I'm your host, Global Vice President at SAP, Tom Raftery. Hi everyone, welcome to the Digital Supply Chain Podcast. My name is Tom Raftery with SAP, and with me I have my two guests today, Mike and Klaus. Mike and Klaus, would you like to introduce yourselves with Mike going first?
Sure, yes. Hi, Tom. I'm Mike. I'm from Oliver Wyke, so we're a thought leader in integrated business planning. And our origins 50 years ago when we first started were back in MRP2, evolving into sales and operations planning. And as I ended up today with integrated business planning, I've worked with Oliver Wyke for 30 years as a client, and then actually joined them probably 5.5 years ago now.
Okay, superb. And Klaus?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I'm part of the Northwestern European Center of Excellence for Supply Chain, where I focus on anything that has to do with business planning, really spending most of my days engaging with SAP customers, prospective SAP customers, discussing how can technology help transform all the efforts around planning within the organization to make them focus on running the business rather than chasing the data, and work closely with some partners, one of those being Oliver Wyke, with whom we now had a very close working relationship for going on 2 years now. I'm very excited about how we complement each other in this space.
Nice. Now, the podcast covers all aspects of supply chain, everything from engineering to manufacturing to logistics, delivery, operations, the whole gamut. So there are likely people listening who may not be aware of what integrated business planning is. So could we start with a bit of a level set on what we mean when we say integrated business planning?
Sure. So integrated business planning stems from sales and operations planning. So back in the 1980s, many people will have heard of sales and operations planning, and it was basically where we took the demand plan, the sales plan, balanced it against the supply plan, see if we had enough capacity and what the inventory looked like. Projected out, back then it was 12 months, was seen best practice. Rolling up to today, we've evolved that now. So through Oliver Wyke, we've reinvented it, if you like, and made it much more integrated. Hence the name, integrated business planning. We've used it because we recognise that actually, you can look out over the medium term to see where you are from a planning point of view. What we actually realised is you can actually now take the top down, so the strategy plans, and look for the gaps from a bottom-up perspective. So we're sales and operations planning, we're bottom-up. What's the plans look like out over the next year? The integrated business planning process is top-down, bottom-up. So what's our business strategy? And then what does our plans from the bottom-up look like? And have we got any gaps? So what we're trying to do is look from a product planning perspective, a commercial planning perspective, and a supply planning perspective. And when we aggregate all that information up from a financial point of view, we can then look at where we are as a business compared to where we want to be. But we're projecting that out now 36 months to see where there are potential gaps that we can now start to integrate integratedly. If that's a word, I might have just made that one up. If we can integratively pull all that together and actually look at how we can close the gaps, not just as a function, but as a business now, rather than the old days, supply guys would tackle that themselves and not talk to the commercial or the product people, or the product people would tackle it themselves and not talk to those. We actually talk to each other, so the whole teams in the business get together, figure out how they can look at how they can lever things around product demand and supply jointly to actually close the gap to bring things back to strategy. out over that medium term. So IBP is more than just supply-demand balancing. It's no strategy deployment. So it's a strategy deployment tool. I hope that understands. I was trying to keep that quite short, but I might have gone on a little too long.
That's okay. Yeah. Klaus, why is it important?
I think it's in the name, integrated business planning. Anybody who wants to be successful, you need to have a plan of where we're going. What is it we want to do with our business? How do we get there? As Mike outlined, where are the gaps? Based on that, we can start coming up with how do we overcome those gaps to realize that strategy. That's where the whole basic alignment between my processes, the behaviors, and then technology to underpin the execution through these processes and driving behaviors enables companies to translate between the functions Mike spoke about. Because yes, we might have a corporate language, be it English, German, French, Spanish, Chinese, but capacity means different things to different people. You mentioned capacity to demand. People is plenty of capacity in the market to consume more. The supply chain guy might say, whoa, we're low on capacity. And the finance people might say, our working capital is tied up in inventories. We have no capacity for investing, right? So that sort of multifaceted translation allows companies to quickly identify areas of risk, areas of opportunity, and with the right information set to make that decision. How do we go ahead here in an integrated manner as one business to become the masters of our own future?
Okay, and this is obviously something that is increasingly important in times of disruption, right?
I think so. If we look at where we are right now, disruptions happen all the time, and we're getting really good at dealing with those sort of small day-to-day disruptions. Supplier runs late, or production line doesn't perform exactly as we expected to, our customer changes order. We deal with that fairly well. We've gotten very nimble and fairly resilient in dealing with that. Now, once in a while, these big disruptions come up, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's geopolitical fallouts, nature, and that's where we go into panic mode. Oh boy, what do we do now? And many organizations start running around. What we see from our side is many organizations now starting to say, what have we learned from this? And that's where it becomes super important with integrated business planning, solution, process. How do we embed those learnings in the organization so we can be better in the future? We can start preparing for them in the future.
Okay, Mike, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to build on what Klaus was saying there, and it's funny, really. A lot of the disruptions we see day to day, self-inflicted in a lot of cases, actually. And what we do is we're extremely good. I say we, not me personally. The people we work with, not the people we work with anyway. But we're extremely good if you think about it, at actually putting in processes to manage these small disruptions. So we build these elaborate add-on processes to take care of variations that we accept in supply and in demand and all that sort in the plans. So we actually put in place things to manage the variations rather than tackling the point of them disruptions in the first place. And then, as Klaus was alluding to there, we've got the bigger stuff then. We've got the disruptions that can impact countries, industries, the world, like with COVID, it's how we manage them as well, because they come more often than we think as well. Different shapes, sizes, and forms. But we do have these disruptions coming along, and it's the companies that have in place the processes that are reliable enough to take the consequence of those disruptions, run that through their planning process, and come up with what they think the most likely outcome is going to be based on that disruption. As opposed to a disruption happens, we go into panic mode and we start crunching loads of data and analysing things to death, missing out probably vital pieces of information, making the wrong decision, doing it again the next day, setting up war rooms, to deal with it, talking about the same thing every day. and you can tell the difference, and Klaus will probably vouch for this as well. Companies that have got a good, mature, capable IBP process in place don't get into that. They very calmly plan the way through it and understand what that impact of the disruption is going to be, where the vulnerabilities are and the opportunities are to the plan, put in place things that they can use to actually, in some cases, take advantage of disruptions and actually make it into a positive outcome. Because a lot of disruptions, although we all see them as negative, because that's our confirmation bias coming in. It's a disruption, it must be negative, so we'll look for all the negative things. But actually, there's a lot of positive stuff around it as well. So even with COVID, there are positives from it, 'cause it's changed the way we work. Some people might think that's in a negative way, but actually it's in a positive way, in that we do all this virtual stuff now. We can work from home, we can sit in the house with our pets. So there's a lot of positive stuff come from it, and there's a lot of positive benefits for a lot of businesses that have come through it as well. But that said, the other side, there has been a significant load of negative impacts as well. But that's disruption in general, I think.
Yeah, my dogs are loving the fact that I'm not traveling at the moment. It's great.
I bet he is, yeah.
But, is this just something for big companies, though? I mean, do small companies need to worry about this? And B, I mean, a lot of the solutions that are out there are probably built for larger companies and priced accordingly, right?
I would say that this is something for companies of all sizes. And one of the things I've seen over the last couple of years is smaller companies that are not or have not been around for too long are typically more aware of this, because they know they're still building their brand, they're still building their market, still finding that niche to call their own. So they are much more aware of it. Big companies who've been around for a long time will sometimes be more surprised by disruption, because they're just so used to this, how we run things. If new technology is all of a sudden ingested, and we can think of many companies who've been disrupted by new technology, and some little startup came up, was fast at spotting that and getting it out there. So it's definitely for companies of all sizes. Is it priced accordingly? Absolutely. Both, I'm going to let Mike talk to this from the Oliver White aspect, but from SAP side, many of our customers are small and mid-sized companies that are either eager to grow or are concerned about the longevity, the sustainability, or just companies that are thinking ahead. Where do we need to look out for? So absolutely, companies of all sizes should be looking into this and are looking into this.
Okay, Klaus, Mike?
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's absolutely what Klaus says. This is for companies of any size, and you wind the clock back. I want to test my age and memory here. 20, 30 years, right? 20, 30 years. One of the biggest companies today is Apple. Right? Where did they start? 3 blokes in a garage, something like that. I can't remember exactly. They were a small company. Look at them now. They disrupted the marketplace, and they're now one of the biggest companies. Amazon started in his bedroom. Look at that. What they've turned into. So it is for companies of any size, and I think having this process, having a good process in place to help you to identify in a regimented way, in a formal cadence managed way, to help you to focus, because you don't have to worry about the process, because it's reliable and the same thing happens every month. You know what's going to come out of it. You can actually focus on what's going on out there in the market. Look for them opportunities, look for them vulnerabilities, look for them potential, and more on the opportunity side for me is like, well, what are the opportunities and how can we start to be a disruptor? Especially for the smaller businesses, because the smaller businesses are probably much more wanting to grow and get bigger quicker, and they are in a lot of cases looking to be the next big disruptor. And having that process in place really helps to focus the mind, I think, identify where them opportunities are and build them plans around getting them opportunities realised. We all talk the talk, but IBP really is about talking the talk and walking the walk as well, is the way I see it. It's actually doing something rather than just sitting around talking about stuff. It's about putting plans into action. It's all action orientated. We're not trying to create a talking shop of ideas. We want to see something come out the other end. Actual things happen.
Okay. You mentioned earlier, Mike, companies taking these kind of disruptions and using them to their advantage. Do you have any examples of that you could talk to?
Right. Okay. So let me have a think back. I guess when we look at some of the things that are probably more relevant to most people, and one that I'm Klaus jump in, but one of them I've seen is the virtual meetings, right? So Zoom and Teams, things we use now every day. But when I think back to what they were like last year, they were basic. You dialed it up, you got your pictures, and that was it. And then a few months later, they'd done the release, and you got the Star Trek backgrounds appearing, and then the breakout rooms have appeared. So they've quickly took advantage of that situation and rework their offer into something now that people want, because they've gone out and there's a market here now. People need to carry on working. Let's adapt our product to actually appeal to more people and be more used to people. You go back two years ago, would you have really thought of having a breakout room in Teams? Really, why would I need one of those? Now it's like I can't live without it. And it's really interesting how that's changed, and they've been. I think that them in particular to me have been quite good at adapting and picking up on that disruption, turn it into something positive. And I guess again something that probably relates to more people in general. When we look at hospitality industry, right, they've quickly adapted to doing click and collect meals and using Deliveroo and them technology platforms to actually keep their business working. And it's quite interesting, really, because I sort of wonder. I mean, they're busy. Right? I was actually down one of the pubs collecting our Sunday lunch last week. I was talking to the guys there, and they're actually saying, we're busy doing these click and collects. So in a lot of ways, it's a little easier because we don't have to clean the tables up and wash up afterwards. So we can serve as much food. We don't have to tidy up. So they were like thinking like that. But then at the true heart of it, people want publicans want people in the premises. But it was an interesting take actually. I thought.
Nice.
I think what pandemic has done is definitely. I live in southern part of Germany in a fairly rural area, and some of the niceties of living in bigger metropolitan areas have all of a sudden become accessible and available in the smaller areas as well. To Mike's point of click and collect takeaway, all of a sudden we actually have a whole selection of restaurants we can order from, where in the past we just didn't, because there's not that need for it. You drive to the restaurant of your choosing, right? So there's a lot of companies have been very quick in identifying that opportunity. I think that's driven by a need. Then I also see companies that in good times see the opportunity. And then I think of one company in Germany called mymuesli.de.
Okay.
That basically realized, hey, people want to have their own muesli mix with nuts, seeds, berries they want to have in there. I don't just want to have regular off the shelf. Internet, fantastic. We're going to buy bulk. You, Tom, you, Mike, you can log on, mix your own muesli. We'll pack that up, ship it to you, DHL, you'll have it the following day or 2 days later. That's somebody who's sort of seen there's a potential here. What do I need? A supply chain. Where do I get my stuff, my supplies from? How do I set that up? And that's another example of having that, identifying an opportunity of starting small, breaking into something, identify some of the trends of the times and converting that into a viable business model. And that's then where Mike's point comes in. The IBP process runs on a monthly basis, or you have that continuous tracking of, are we meeting our goals? Do we need to steer one direction or another? What do we do to continue to grow? And that's really what it's all about.
Okay.
And I think on a bigger scale, for the people in the UK, when you look at what happened on retail recently, and then like the COVID and the shops getting shut down, and retail was struggling anyhow before all this. So the people that have set up the online brands doing quite well. COVID comes and doing even better, and the recent Topshop closures there, with the Arcadia Group brands all going on. The Boohoo and ASOS come along, buy the things up, switch it into their online platform. So straight away they've cleaned up, picked up some high street brands, got them into the world of the internet, so people can carry on ordering them. They kept the brand alive, but they've got rid of all the shops and the costs associated with them shops, and they were very quick to do that. I thought, so they know what they're doing, and they took advantage. They were ready, and they took advantage of the situation there to grow their business further by bringing on some well-known brands into their portfolio.
Interesting.
It's really interesting when you sit back and think about it. What's gone on, and it genuinely these things change the world as we know it. And companies can grasp this and take advantage of it if they're ready to do that.
Okay, cool. So if companies do want to grasp that nettle and start on this journey into integrated business planning, what would be first steps?
Well, so first steps really is, I think the first step is probably self-recognition. You've got to want to change, so you've got to want to make things better for yourself. If you are quite happy with your lot, then if we come along and say you want to do integrated business planning, and you're quite happy doing whatever you're doing, you're never going to change. So you've got to have that desire and that drive to actually want to do things better and continually improve, I think, and get into that sort of position.
But I'm fine with my Excel spreadsheets, Mike.
Yep, and you know what? A lot of people are. We wouldn't recommend trying to run a business from Excel spreadsheets. They are just prone to data, and there's time consuming. I mean, I'll tell you what scares me is when we're talking about business risk, right? How many companies are running critical business processes on an Excel